The thunder rolled across the whispering mountains like the drums of angry gods. Elena Vasquez pulled her leather jacket tighter as she hurried toward her workshop, rain lashing against her face with surprising force. The storm had come from nowhere, turning the peaceful evening into a nightmare of wind and lightning that seemed almost supernatural in its fury. That Elena had built her workshop high in the mountains for privacy and peace. As one of the few human engineers willing to work with otherworldly technology, she needed isolation from the suspicious eyes of the valley towns below. Her clients came from far and wide, seeking her unique ability to blend human innovation with mystical elements. Tonight, however, she wished she lived closer to civilization. A sound cut through the howling wind that made her blood freeze. Was not thunder or the crash of falling trees. It was a roar of pain and rage that seemed to shake the very foundations of the mountain. Elena stopped dead in her tracks, her hand instinctively reaching for the plasma torch on her belt. She had heard that sound only once before. In the ancient recordings her grandfather had left her. It was the cry of a dragon. An unexpected visitor lightning illuminated the sky in brilliant white flashes, and in one of those moments, Elena saw something impossible. A massive winged shape was plummeting from the storm clouds, spinning out of control like a broken aircraft. But this was no machine. The creature was easily the size of a small building, with scales that caught the lightning and reflected it back in shades of deep red and gold. The dragon hit the mountainside with tremendous force, sending rocks and debris flying in all directions. Elena felt the impact through the soles of her boots as she ran toward the crash site, her engineer's mind already analyzing what she had seen. One wing had been twisted at an unnatural angle, and dark liquid that could only be blood was visible even from a distance. When she reached the crater, Elena's breath caught in her throat. A dragon was magnificent even in its wounded state. Its scales were the color of rubies and fire opals, and even unconscious, it radiated a presence that spoke of ancient power and nobility. But it was clearly dying. The creature's breathing was labored, and one of its wings hung at a sickening angle. Worse, there were wounds across its body that looked deliberate, as if it had been attacked by weapons designed specifically to harm dragons. Elena had read about such things in the forbidden texts her grandfather had hidden away. "Easy there, beautiful," Elena whispered, approaching slowly with her hands visible. She had no idea if the dragon could understand human speech, but her voice seemed to have some effect. One massive golden eye opened and fixed on her with an intelligence that was unmistakably aware. The princess revealed to Elena's amazement the dragon began to shimmer and change. The massive form contracted and shifted until a young woman lay in the crater where the dragon had been. She appeared to be in her early 20s, with long crimson hair that seemed to move like living flame and skin that held a subtle golden sheen. Her clothes were torn and bloodied, but Elena could see they had once been fine garments fit for royalty. "You are human," the woman said, her voice carrying a musical quality that resonated strangely in Elena's chest. "Why do you not run in fear?" Elena knelt beside the injured woman, her engineer's training taking over. "Because you're hurt, and I don't run from people who need help. Can you tell me your name?" The woman studied Elena's face with those remarkable golden eyes. "I am Crimson, daughter of Queen Seraphina, heir to the throne of the Sky Kingdom." She tried to sit up and gasped in pain. "Though I may not live to claim that inheritance." "Princess or not, you need medical attention," Elena said firmly. "Can you walk? My workshop isn't far, and I have supplies there that might help." Crimson attempted to change back to her dragon form, but the transformation flickered and failed. She remained human, looking frustrated and vulnerable. "My shape-shifting abilities are damaged along with everything else. I cannot maintain my..." true form for more than a few moments. Elena helped the princess to her feet, surprised by how warm her skin was to the touch. Then we'll work with what we have. Lean on me. Sanctuary in the Storm Elena's workshop was a marvel of organized chaos. Tools both familiar and exotic hung from every available surface, while half-finished projects covered most of the work tables. The walls were lined with blueprints and technical drawings that seemed to blend scientific principles with mystical symbols in ways that would have baffled most engineers. Remarkable, Crimson murmured as Elena helped her to a chair. You work with both human technology and ancient arts. I have never seen such a combination. My grandfather taught me that the best solutions often come from unexpected places, Elena replied, gathering medical supplies. Now let me take a look at those wounds. As Elena cleaned and bandaged the princess's injuries, Crimson told her. Story. She had been betrayed by her own brother, Prince Obsidian, who had allied himself with shadow creatures from the Void Realm. He wanted the throne for himself and had set an ambush during what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic flight. The shadow weapons poison more than flesh, Crimson explained, wincing as Elena worked on a particularly deep cut. They corrupt the spirit itself. My ability to maintain dragon form, my connection to the sky magic of my people, all of it is being slowly destroyed. Elena's hands stilled for a moment. How long do you have? Perhaps a few days before the corruption spreads to my heart. When that happens, I will die, and with me any hope of stopping my brother's alliance with the shadow realm. The weight of responsibility settled on Elena's shoulders like a physical burden. She had always preferred working with machines to dealing with people, but she could not turn away from someone in such desperate need, especially not when that someone might be the key to preventing a war between realms. Then we'd better get to work, Elena said with more confidence than she felt. I've never built wings for a dragon before, but I've always enjoyed a good challenge. Shadows in the night, as the storm raged outside, Elena began sketching preliminary designs for prosthetic wings that might restore Crimson's ability to fly. The princess watched with growing amazement as Elena's ideas took shape on paper. The designs blended advanced materials science with mystical energy channeling in ways that seemed impossible, yet somehow logical. You truly believe you can help me? Crimson asked, her voice soft with something that might have been hope. I believe in trying, Elena replied, not looking up from her work. Though I should warn you, if your brother's really allied with shadow creatures, they'll probably come looking for you here. As if summoned by her words, a new sound joined the storm outside. It was a howling that spoke of hunger and hatred, growing closer by the moment. Elena grabbed a weapon from her tool rack, a modified plasma cutter that could serve as both tool and defense. They have found me, Crimson said, struggling to her feet despite her injuries. You should run, Elena. You have done more than enough. By giving me shelter. Elena checked the charge on her weapon and moved to stand beside the princess. I don't run from bullies, whether they're human or something else. Besides, someone has to protect you while you heal. The workshop's reinforced door began to glow and warp as something outside attacked it with unnatural heat. Through the windows, Elena could see shapes moving in the storm that defied easy description. They were made of living shadow, but moved with predatory intelligence. Stay behind me, Elena ordered, raising her weapon as the door finally gave way. What poured through? The opening was a nightmare made manifest. The shadow creatures flowed like liquid darkness, but struck like solid steel. Their eyes burned with cold fire, and their claws left trails of ice wherever they touched. Elena's plasma cutter proved effective against them, each shot dissolving. Sections of shadow, but there were too many. Just when it seemed they would be overwhelmed, Crimson managed a partial transformation. Her human form remained, but dragon fire burst from her hands in streams of golden flame. The shadows recoiled from the light and heat, giving Elena the opening she needed to drive them back. Together, the human engineer and the dragon princess fought side by side until the last of the shadow creatures fled into the storm. Elena found herself breathing hard, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she looked at Crimson with new respect. "That was incredible," Elena said, lowering her weapon. "I've never seen anything like that fire magic." Crimson swayed on her feet, clearly exhausted by the effort. "It is the last of my strength. The next time they come, I will not be able to help you fight them off." Elena caught the princess as she began to fall, supporting her weight easily. "Then we'd better make sure you're flying again before that happens. Come on, let's get you back to that chair. We have work to do." As Elena helped Crimson settle back into her seat, she felt something she had not experienced in years. Purpose. For too long, she had been content to work in isolation, creating marvels that few would ever see or appreciate. Now she had the chance to do something that truly mattered. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the workshop, a different kind of energy was building. Elena pulled out fresh paper and began sketching with renewed determination. She would find a way to restore Crimson's wings, not just because it was the right thing to do, but because she was beginning to realize that the Dragon Princess had brought something into her life that she had not even known was missing. The first spark of something deeper than friendship was beginning to kindle between them, though neither would admit it yet. For now, they had wings to build and a kingdom to save. Dawn broke gray and reluctant over the whispering mountains. But Elena had not slept. She had spent the night refining her wing designs, while Crimson rested fitfully in the workshop's small sleeping alcove. The princess's condition had stabilized, but Elena could see the shadow corruption spreading like dark veins beneath her golden skin. "We need materials I don't have," Elena announced as Crimson stirred awake. "Specifically, we need someone who can forge the wing framework from dragon-scale steel." Crimson sat up slowly, her movements still pained. "Dragon-scale steel is a lost art among humans. The last smiths who knew its secrets died centuries ago." "Not all of them," Elena said with a slight smile. "There's someone I know who might be able to help, but he's not exactly what you'd call friendly. Thane Blackwater lives in the Ember Forge, about a day's journey from here." The name seemed to spark recognition in Crimson's golden eyes. Blackwater? But that family was exiled from the Sky Kingdom generations ago for stealing dragon fire, which is exactly why he might be the only human alive who can work with the materials we need, Elena replied, gathering supplies into a travel pack. "Besides, from what I know of Thane, the exile probably wasn't entirely his family's fault." Journeyed to the Ember Forge, they traveled through mountain paths that seemed designed to discourage visitors. Elena had fashioned a crude walking stick for Crimson, whose legs still trembled from the shadow corruption, but the princess insisted on making the journey in human form to conserve what little shape-shifting energy she had left. As they walked, Elena found herself stealing glances at her companion. There was something about Crimson that went beyond her obvious beauty or royal bearing. The way she moved spoke of centuries of confidence and power, yet she carried herself without arrogance. When they stopped to rest beside a mountain stream, she knelt and cupped water in her hands with the same grace she might have used for a royal ceremony. "Tell me about your family," Elena said, settling beside her on a fallen log. "What was it? Like growing up as dragon royalty?" Crimson's expression grew distant. "Lonely, mostly. My brother Obsidian and I were raised to be rivals rather than siblings. Everything was a competition. Who could fly faster, breathe hotter fire, master shape-shifting first." She touched the shadow-tainted wounds on her arm. "I never realized how far his jealousy would drive him. And now he's allied with shadow. Creatures to claim your throne? A void realm has been trying to corrupt our world for millennia, Crimson explained. They feed on negative emotions, fear, hatred, despair. Obsidian's jealousy made him the perfect target for their whispers. She looked at Elena with those remarkable golden eyes. What about you? How did a human woman end up living alone in the mountains, building impossible things? Elena was quiet for a moment, considering how much to reveal. My grandfather was an explorer who discovered caches of ancient technology hidden throughout these mountains. Some of it was human, some was clearly not. He spent his life trying to understand how it all fit together. She picked up a smooth stone and turned it over in her hands. When he died, he left me everything. His workshop, his research, his questions. I've been trying to find answers ever since. And have you found them? Some. Enough to know that our worlds, human and dragon, were meant to work together, not apart. Elena stood and offered Crimson her hand. Come on, we still have hours to walk, and I want to reach the Ember Forge before dark. The exiles' welcome Thane Blackwater's forge was built into the side of a volcanic peak, with streams of lava providing both heat and dramatic lighting. The sound of hammering echoed across the mountainside long before they reached the entrance, accompanied by a young voice singing what sounded like an ancient dragon lullaby. The smith himself was a giant of a man, easily 7 feet tall with arms like tree trunks, and a beard that had been singed so many times it looked more like charcoal than hair. When he saw Elena approaching with Crimson, his hammer stopped mid-swing. Elena Vasquez, he rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. I wondered when you'd finally come calling. And you've brought a dragon princess with you, if my eyes don't deceive me. Hello, Thane, Elena replied calmly. We need your help with a rather unusual project. The blacksmith's eyes fixed on Crimson as she met his gaze without flinching despite her weakened state. Blackwater, she said formally. Your family's exile was unjust. I have read the true records. Thane's expression softened slightly. That's ancient history, Your Highness. Though I appreciate the acknowledgement. He gestured for them to enter. The forge? Come in, both of you. Let's see what impossible thing you want me to build. The young dragon's secret inside the forge. Elena was surprised to see a young dragon barely larger than a house cat perched near the main furnace. The little creature had scales the color of bright copper and was carefully tending a series of smaller fires with miniature bellows. That's Ember, Thane explained, noticing Elena's stare. Found her egg abandoned in the mountains 3 years ago. Raised her myself. Ember looked up at Crimson and immediately began chirping excitedly in what Elena recognized as dragon speech. Crimson responded in the same musical language, and the little dragon's eyes went wide with what could only be recognition. What's she saying? Elena asked. She recognizes me from the royal court, Crimson replied, kneeling to bring herself closer to Ember's level. She says her parents served in my mother's guard before they disappeared during one of Obsidian's training exercises. Thane's expression darkened. I was wondering why a dragon egg would be abandoned so far from the Sky Kingdom. Your brother has much to answer for. Elena spread her winged designs on the forge's main work table, and both Thane and Ember crowded around to examine them. The blacksmith's trained eye quickly grasped the complexity of what she was proposing. Dragon-scale steel for the framework, living metal for the joints, and some kind of energy channeling system I don't recognize, he muttered, tracing the design with one massive finger. This is either brilliant or completely insane. It's both, Elena admitted. The energy channels are based on research my grandfather did into dragon physiology. In theory, they should allow Crimson to direct her natural fire magic through the prosthetic wings. In theory, Thane repeated. And if the theory is wrong? Then the wings will be beautiful but useless, and crimson will die when the shadow corruption reaches her heart. The forge fell silent, except for the crackling of flames. Finally, Thane nodded slowly. Well then, we'd better make sure the theory is correct. Ember, start heating the dragon scale ingots. Elena, I'll need exact measurements of the princess's wing attachment points. Your Highness, he turned to Crimson. This is going to hurt, and I'll need you to maintain partial dragon form during the fitting process. Forging under fire, the work took the better part of the day, and it was some of the most challenging Elena had ever undertaken. Thane's knowledge of dragon-scale steel was encyclopedic, but working with it required constant communication between all four of them. The metal had to be heated to temperatures that would have vaporized ordinary steel, shaped while channeling specific types of magical energy, and cooled in patterns that matched dragon physiology. Elena found herself working closer and closer with Crimson as the day progressed. The princess had to maintain a partial transformation that left her with scaled arms and small wing knobs, which required constant concentration in her weakened state. More than once, Elena had to catch her when exhaustion threatened to break. The transformation. I've got you, Elena whispered during one such moment, her arms around Crimson's waist as the princess swayed on her feet. Just a little longer. I cannot maintain this much longer, Crimson gasped, leaning into Elena's strength. The corruption is spreading faster now. Elena looked at the partially completed wing framework, then at Thane. How much more do we need? Another hour, maybe two for the final adjustments, the blacksmith replied without looking up from his work. Ember, we need more heat on the joint connectors. That was when they heard the howling outside battle at the forge. The shadow creatures came. In greater numbers this time, pouring down the mountainside like a dark avalanche. But they had made a crucial mistake in attacking the Ember Forge. Thane Blackwater had been preparing for this kind of assault for 3 years. Elena, get the princess to the back chamber, Thane roared, grabbing a massive warhammer from the wall. Ember, activate the perimeter defenses. The little dragon shot toward a series of levers built into the forge's far wall, pulling them in rapid sequence. Suddenly, the entrance was blocked by a wall of superheated metal and jets of dragon. Fire began shooting from hidden nozzles throughout the forge. But the shadow creatures were more persistent than before, and they had learned from their previous defeat. Some of them began seeping through cracks in the volcanic rock itself, reforming inside the forge with claws and fangs ready. Elena found herself fighting back-to-back with Crimson, her plasma cutter weaving patterns of destruction, while the princess sent streams of golden fire at anything that moved wrong. Thane waded into the battle with his warhammer, each swing dispersing entire creatures back to the darkness they came from. But it was Ember who surprised everyone. The little dragon suddenly began to grow, her copper scales blazing like the sun as she revealed herself to be far older and more powerful than she had appeared. Her true form was still smaller than Crimson's, but large enough to fill a significant portion of the forge with protective fire. Royal Guard Dragon, Crimson gasped, recognition dawning. Ember, you were one of my mother's personal protectors. The battle turned quickly after that revelation. Between Ember's restored power, Thane's prepared defenses, and the combined efforts of Elena and Crimson, the shadow creatures found themselves outmatched. As the last of them fled into the mountain darkness, Ember began to shrink back to her smaller form. Why did you hide your true nature? Elena asked the little dragon. Ember chirped something in dragon speech, and Crimson translated. She says she was protecting the forge and Thane, but also waiting for the right moment to reveal herself. She knew I would come here eventually. The wing's first test, with the immediate threat past, they were able to complete the wing framework. As the sun set behind the volcanic peaks, the finished prosthetics were works of art as much as engineering marvels. with dragon-scale steel forming elegant curves that perfectly matched the aerodynamics Elena had calculated. "The moment of truth," Thane announced as they prepared to attach the wings to Crimson's shoulder joints. "Your Highness, are you ready?" Crimson nodded, though Elena could see the fear in her golden eyes. If this failed, there would be no second chance. A shadow corruption had spread visibly during the day's work, dark veins now reaching almost to her heart. The attachment process was unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. As the prosthetic wings made contact with Crimson's natural wing joints, both the metal and the princess began to glow with soft golden light. Elena could feel energy flowing through the carefully crafted channels she had designed, carrying Crimson's natural magic into the artificial wings. "How does it feel?" Elena asked softly, her hands still supporting the wing connections. Crimson spread the prosthetic wings experimentally, and everyone held their breath. The wings responded perfectly, extending to their full span with fluid grace. When she flapped them, the downdraft was strong enough to scatter tools across the forge floor. "They feel real," Crimson whispered in amazement. "More than real. I can sense the air currents through them, feel the magic flowing." She looked at Elena with an expression that was equal parts gratitude and something deeper. "You gave me back the sky." Elena felt her heart skip a beat at the intensity in Crimson's gaze. "We're not done yet. You need to test them in actual flight before we can be sure." But before Crimson could respond, Ember began chittering urgently, pointing toward the forge entrance with one small claw. In the distance, they could all hear it now, the deep, resonant roar of a large dragon approaching fast. "Prince Obsidian," Crimson said, her voice hardening with determination. "He's coming to finish what the shadow creature started." Elena checked her plasma cutter's charge and found herself moving protectively closer to Crimson. "Then I guess it's time to see if those wings can handle combat as well as flight." Outside, the roar grew louder, accompanied by the sound of massive wings beating against the night air. The final confrontation was about to begin, and Elena realized with crystal clarity that somewhere during their time together, her feelings for the Dragon Princess had grown far beyond simple friendship or professional obligation. She was falling in love with a creature from another realm, and she was about to help her fight for both their lives. Prince Obsidian descended from the eyes, storm clouds like a nightmare given form. His dragon shape was larger than Crimson's, with scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Shadow creatures clung to his massive frame like parasites, their cold fire eyes gleaming with malevolent hunger. When he landed on the plateau outside the Ember Forge, the very ground seemed to wither beneath his claws. "Sister," his voice boomed across the mountainside, carrying the authority of royalty, twisted by corruption. "You have caused me considerable trouble. Surrender now, and I will make your death swift." Crimson stepped out of the forge, her new wings gleaming in the moonlight like liquid fire. Elena moved to stand beside her, plasma cutter ready, while Thane and Ember flanked them on either side. The little dragon had resumed her true form, copper scales blazing with protective fury. "Hello, brother," Crimson replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the threat before them. "I see you've made some interesting friends since our last meeting." Obsidian's laugh was like breaking glass. "These shadow lords have shown me truths that our mother's weak kingdom has forgotten. Power belongs to those strong enough to seize it, not those who inherit it through accident of birth." "And what of our people?" Crimson demanded. "What happens to the Sky Kingdom when you let the Void Realm consume it?" "The weak will serve or perish," Obsidian snarled, "as will any humans foolish enough to stand with you." Elena stepped forward, her weapon humming with barely contained energy. "Your quarrel is with your sister, not with us. Leave, and no one else has to get hurt." The Shadow Prince's attention focused on Elena with predatory interest. Ah, the little engineer who thinks she can build wings for dragons. Tell me, human, do you really believe those crude prosthetics can match the power of pure dragon heritage? Only one way to find out, Elena replied, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. Battle of fire and shadow, the fight erupted with devastating suddenness. Obsidian launched himself skyward, shadow creatures streaming from his form like living. Smoke, they attacked from all directions, forcing the defenders to spread out across the plateau. Elena found herself separated from Crimson as a wave of shadow beasts flowed between them. Her plasma cutter proved effective against the creatures, each shot dissolving sections of living darkness, but their numbers seemed endless. Worse, she could see that they were learning from each encounter, adapting their tactics to avoid her attacks. Thane fought with the fury of 3 generations of exile, his warhammer crushing shadow creatures with each swing while he roared challenges in. The ancient dragon tongue. Ember darted between the larger combatants, her copper fire proving especially effective against the void spawn, but it was Crimson who commanded the sky. Her new wings carried her through aerial maneuvers that would have been impossible with her old prosthetics, weaving between her brother's attacks while returning fire with streams of golden flame. Elena watched in amazement as the princess demonstrated the true grace of dragon flight, her artificial wings responding to her will as if they had been born with her. "You cannot win, sister," Obsidian called out as they circled each other high. Above the forge, "I have the power of the void realm behind me. Your human friends have built you pretty toys, but they are still just metal and magic." "These wings are more than that," Crimson replied, banking sharply to avoid a blast of shadow fire. "They were built with hope, with friendship, with something you've forgotten how to feel." She dove toward the plateau, and Elena realized what she was planning. "Thane, Ember, get ready. She's coming in fast." The power of United Hearts Crimson's dive brought her directly toward Elena, but instead of landing, she extended one clawed hand downward. Elena understood immediately, dropping her plasma cutter and leaping upward to catch the princess's outstretched talons. The new wings proved strong enough to lift both of them into the sky, carrying Elena away from the shadow creatures swarming. Across the ground, "What are you doing?" Elena gasped as they soared upward together. "Something my brother doesn't understand," Crimson replied, banking toward where Obsidian hovered in apparent confusion. "The power of fighting together instead of alone." Elena looked down at her plasma cutter, then at the shadow prince ahead of them, and suddenly understood. "The energy channels in your wings, they're designed to conduct magical energy, not just your natural fire." "Exactly. Can you modify your weapon to interface with them?" Elena's mind raced through the technical possibilities. "Maybe, but I'd need to recalibrate the energy output matrix, and we're kind of in the middle of a fight right now." "Then we do it the hard way," Crimson said, adjusting her flight path to intercept her brother. "Hold on tight and trust me." What followed was the most terrifying and exhilarating experience of Elena's life. Crimson engaged Obsidian in aerial combat, while Elena clung to her claws, using her plasma cutter to attack the shadow creatures that swarmed around the Dark Prince. The combination proved devastatingly effective. Crimson's superior maneuverability, thanks to her new wings, combined with Elena's precision weapons fire, began to thin the ranks of void spawn significantly. But Obsidian was far from finished. Drawing power from the shadow realm, he began to grow larger, his form becoming more monstrous as darkness flowed into him from rifts that opened in the air itself. "He's channeling too much void energy," Crimson warned. "If he continues, he'll tear holes in reality itself." Love's true strength below them. Elena could see Thane and Ember being overwhelmed by the increasing numbers of shadow creatures pouring through the rifts. The situation was desperate, and conventional tactics weren't going to be enough. "Crimson, Elena called out over the wind and battle noise. "I need you to trust me completely. Can you channel your fire magic through the wing energy conduits while we're flying?" "Yes, but why would I need to?" Elena pulled a small device from her toolkit, an experimental energy coupling she had been working on for months. "Because I think I can create a feedback loop between your natural magic and my plasma technology. It might be powerful enough to close those rifts. It might also kill us both if the energy surge is too strong," Crimson pointed out. "Then we'd better make sure we get it right the first time." Elena replied with a grin that was equal parts confidence and terror. They broke away from Obsidian's immediate vicinity, giving Elena time to jury-rig her device to interface with the wing conduits. The process required her to work with one hand while hanging from Crimson's claws hundreds of feet above the ground. But her years of engineering experience served her well. "Ready," she announced, just as Obsidian's roar of fury echoed across the mountains. "Elena," Crimson said softly, her voice barely audible over the wind, "if this doesn't work, I want you to know that meeting you has been the greatest joy of my very long life." Elena looked up into those golden eyes and felt her heart skip. "If this doesn't work, I'm going to be very disappointed that I never got to properly kiss a dragon princess." Crimson's laugh was like music. "Then we'd better make sure it works." The light that breaks all shadows, they dove toward the largest of the void rifts, Elena's device interfacing with Crimson's wing conduits as the princess channeled her fire magic through the artificial energy channels. The feedback effect was immediate and spectacular. Golden fire erupted from the prosthetic wings and streams that pulsed with technological enhancement, creating a light so bright it seemed to burn away the very concept of shadow. The beam struck the central rift and began to collapse it, but the energy feedback was enormous. Elena felt the device overheating in her hands, while Crimson's entire body began to glow with the strain of channeling so much magical power through artificial conduits. "Hold on," Crimson gasped. "Just a little longer." The rift collapsed with a sound like reality tearing, and the effect cascaded to the other openings. One by one, the tiers in space sealed themselves, cutting off the flow of shadow creatures and leaving Obsidian suddenly bereft of his void realm reinforcements. But the effort had cost them dearly. Both Elena and Crimson were exhausted, and they began to lose altitude rapidly. Elena's device had burned out completely, and she could see that some of the wing conduits had overloaded from the massive energy surge. They were going to crash. A future written in fire, and Steel Thane caught them at the last possible moment, his massive arms cushioning their impact as they hit the plateau hard enough to crack stone. For several moments, nobody moved, the only sound their labored breathing and the crackling of cooling metal. "Is everyone alive?" Elena managed to ask. "Mostly," Crimson replied, though Elena could see that the energy overload had left her weak and shaking. Obsidian landed nearby, but his monstrous shadow form was already beginning to revert to normal dragon shape. Cut off from the void realm's power, he looked confused and diminished, as if waking from a terrible dream. "Sister?" he said uncertainly. "What have I done?" The shadow corruption that had marked him was fading, revealing the dragon prince Elena. Suspected he had been before jealousy and void whispers had twisted his mind. Crimson struggled to her feet and walked slowly toward her brother. "You made mistakes," she said simply, "but they can be forgiven if you're willing to make amends." The reunion of the royal siblings was touching, but Elena found her attention focused on the damaged wing conduits. The prosthetics had held up remarkably well, considering the massive energy surge, but they would need significant repairs. "The wings can be fixed," Thane announced, examining the damage with a professional eye. "Might even be able to improve them based on what we learned tonight." "We?" Elena asked. The master blacksmith grinned. "You don't think I'm going to let you have all the fun, do you?" Besides, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more cooperation between the human settlements and the Sky Kingdom in the near future. Someone's going to need to facilitate that. Ember chirped agreement, then resumed her smaller form and settled on Thane's shoulder like a miniature guardian. When two worlds become one 3 weeks later, Elena stood on a platform high in the Sky Kingdom's capital city, watching Crimson demonstrate her repaired and improved wings to the assembled dragon nobility. The new design incorporated lessons learned from their battle with the shadow creatures, making them not just prosthetics, but true enhancements that allowed feats of flight impossible even for natural dragon wings. Queen Seraphina, Crimson's mother, had been initially skeptical of human engineering, but the results spoke for themselves. Plans were already underway for a formal alliance between the Sky Kingdom and the human settlements, with Elena serving as chief technical advisor. Magnificent, Prince Obsidian commented, joining Elena at the platform's edge. The former shadow. Prince had been working tirelessly to undo the damage his alliance with the Void Realm had caused, and his genuine remorse had gone a long way toward earning forgiveness from both his family and his people. Your sister is an exceptional pilot, Elena replied, watching Crimson execute a complex aerial maneuver that would have been lethal with her old prosthetics. She's also completely in love with you, Obsidian said casually, in case you hadn't noticed. Elena felt her cheeks warm. Dragons and humans don't exactly have a history of successful romantic relationships. Then perhaps it's time to make some new history, a familiar voice said behind them. Elena turned to find Crimson approaching, having landed on the platform with barely a whisper of sound. Her golden eyes were bright with joy and something deeper. Your Highness, Elena began formally, but Crimson cut her off. My name is Crimson, the princess said firmly, stepping closer. And I believe you once mentioned something about properly kissing a dragon princess. Elena's breath caught as Crimson reached out to cup her face with hands that were warm and gentle despite their strength. Are you sure about this? There will be complications, political ramifications, people who won't understand. Let them complain. Crimson replied, her lips mere inches from Elena's. I've spent centuries following other people's expectations. For once in my life, I want to follow my heart. Their kiss was everything Elena had dreamed it would be and more. It tasted of fire and starlight, of adventure and coming home, of two souls finding each other across the vast differences of species and culture. When they finally broke apart, Elena realized that the assembled dragon nobility had all stopped what they were doing to watch. Well, she murmured, I guess that makes it official. Indeed it does, Queen Seraphina said, approaching with a smile that was both regal and genuinely warm. Welcome to the family, Elena Vasquez. I have a feeling you're going to fit in quite well here. Epilogue. Wings of Tomorrows. 6 months later, Elena's workshop had been relocated to a facility that's bridged the gap between the Sky Kingdom and the human settlements below. The new location was both symbolic and practical, allowing for easy collaboration between the two peoples, who were slowly learning to trust each other again. Thane had established a sister forge nearby, while Ember served as an unofficial ambassador, charming everyone she met with her enthusiasm for bringing the two cultures together. Even Obsidian had found his place in the new order, using his intimate knowledge of Shadow Realm tactics to help establish defenses against any future void incursions. Elena looked up from her latest project, a set of wings designed for a young human who had been paralyzed in an accident, to see Crimson landing on the workshop's extended platform. Even after all this time, the sight of her beloved in flight never failed to take Elena's breath away. How goes the work? Crimson asked, transforming to human form as she entered the workshop. Almost finished, Elena replied, indicating the delicate prosthetics taking shape in the fabricator. These should let Thomas fly alongside the dragon children in his class. You're going to change the world, you know, Crimson said, wrapping her arms around Elena from behind and resting her chin on the engineer's shoulder. We're going to change it, Elena corrected, leaning back into her lover's warmth. All of us, together. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson that seemed created specifically for them. Elena had found her purpose, her place, and her heart's desire all in one remarkable dragon princess who had literally fallen from the sky into her life. Sometimes the best love stories began with the most impossible circumstances, and sometimes the greatest adventures started with a simple willingness to help someone in need. Elena had learned that the distance between two hearts had nothing to do with species or realm of origin, and everything to do with the courage to reach out and take someone's hand, or in their case, to build wings strong enough to carry love itself into the endless sky dot in the distance. A young dragon and a human child were racing through the clouds on matching sets of Elena's prosthetic wings, their laughter echoing across the mountains like a promise of the future that was coming. A future where the impossible had become possible, where love conquered all barriers, and where dreams really could take flight. The end was really just the beginning of their never-ending story.